That may be the greatest catch I've ever seen in my life.
All right, let's get this going. Let's talk about something that I have been doing in Dynasty for years now. Now, you haven't been able to do this really at all this offseason until now, and that is utilizing one of the most important tools that we have in fantasy football, and that is high stakes redraft ADP. Now, I'm going to get into exactly how I use this for Dynasty leagues, and this is not just for contending rosters. I mean, this is used for evaluating players all the way from rookies all the way to guys like Julio Jones, and it's going to be very useful. Of course, we're going to get to how you do that, how you use that in your strategy, and also at the end of the video, we're going to be talking about the players that actually are impacted by this. But first, I need to make the announcement. The Flock Meetup is happening June 19th, 6 p.m. at Zilker Park. Please, if you have a chance to come out to Austin, Texas, June 19th, which is next Saturday, do so. This is going to be the only Flock Meetup that we have, so please, please, please come out. And also, drop a like, leave a comment, subscribe to the channel. I mean, we continue to grow so fast, and that's with everybody leaving those likes. So, y'all, a massive thank you for that. And yeah, let's dive into this. So let's talk about how we are using the high stakes redraft ADP for our own Dynasty evaluation. And it's very simple here. I mean, you face a decision in almost every startup draft where you're looking at players that are within the same Dynasty tier. You're looking at guys like a Brandon Ayuk and a Chase Claypool, and you're going, okay, these players are almost neck and neck for me. I have not been able to come to a conclusion on my own where we stand with their Dynasty value. What am I going to use as a tiebreaker? And I know a lot of people go to our Discord chat, the Patreon chat, whatever it is, and they try to get some differing opinions in there and try to get someone to sell them on a player, and then they can make the decision based on that, because obviously you're going to be the person making the decision. You're going to be the person with your own values, and you're just looking for other tools that can help you break ties where you're having a hard time coming to a decision. But what I really like to do at this time of the year is we already have our tiers based on what we had at the beginning of the offseason, when you had to sit there and you had to go through those startup drafts, go through making those trades, go through the rookie drafts, and really have an understanding on how you value those players. But now when you get to those tiebreakers, since there have been so many high stakes fantasy football drafts already in 2021, I love going over there and checking out that ADP. And no, this is not ADP for Dynasty leagues. This is ADP for redraft leagues. And I'm going to say something that I know a lot of people are going to think is controversial. I know a lot of people are not going to agree with me on this. But by far and away, the high stakes redraft community is better at fantasy football than the Dynasty community. Now, this is coming from someone who exclusively, almost exclusively, plays in Dynasty leagues and has done so since 2014. But I can tell you, not only do I love Dynasty fantasy football, and that's why I invest a significant amount of money every single year into it, but the main reason I invest a ton of money into Dynasty fantasy football every single year is the fact that Dynasty players are very bad. I mean, they are very bad at trying to determine what matters in valuing a player and where they should be going in a rookie draft. I mean, how often are you hearing, I'm going to draft this guy and I'm going to have him on my Dynasty team for 15 years. And I'm sitting here going, good luck trying to project someone that's not named Patrick Mahomes for 15 years. I mean, there are so many things that Dynasty owners get wrong. So what I really like to do is I like to look at the updated 2021 projections that the high stakes redraft community provides us with. I like to have our understanding of what NFL contracts look like, what NFL team situations look like for the next 3 to 4 years, and how things are going to change in the long term, and come up with a conclusion based on the updated 2021 projections that we have, as well as our understanding of the long-term outlook on what an accurate Dynasty value should be for a certain player. Now, a perfect example of this is going to be Najee Harris. Now, with Najee Harris, I mean, you go to redraft leagues right now, and this is a player that is getting drafted at the 1-2 turn. I mean, this is someone that is a late first, early second round pick. Now, I understand that everybody watching this video is going to have their own opinion on what they think about that. I know a lot of people are going to think that he is being overdrafted there, which is completely fine to say. I mean, I would actually say that I would probably prefer having a guy like Aaron Jones, having a guy like Joe Mixon, definitely having a guy like Austin Eckler all over Najee Harris. But it doesn't change the fact that the rest of the community is currently projecting him to be worth that pick. So at least you have to sit there and you have to think, why? Why is this going to be the median projection for Najee Harris for the majority of people? And if he hits this, what is going to happen to his dynasty value 12 months from now? Because the absolute worst thing I hear in Dynasty, this comes from pretty much anybody that touts a player, that player disappoints after a season, and they go, hey, I wasn't promoting Jalen Reagor for year one production. We weren't wanting year one production. I was telling you to draft Jalen Reagor last year because he's a player that by year 3 is going to be dominant. Well, that guy is doing you a disservice. Whoever is telling you that piece of advice, whoever is trying to sell that to you, they're trying to sell you something that is completely fake. Because what matters in Dynasty is rookie season production, and what is going to happen is you are going to see Dynasty values drastically change for those players because of so. I mean, I'm sitting here saying, hey, it doesn't matter. If you really love Jalen Reagor for 3 years into his NFL career, instead of going out there and drafting him in his rookie draft, why aren't you instead just going through drafting a running back in that same range, understanding the running back's probably going to produce earlier, and then this offseason, you can go through and you can take that Cam Akers, you can trade him for Jalen Reagor plus a ton more. So you really have to understand how the upcoming season's production is going to have an impact on the dynasty evaluation for these players 12 months from now. Now with Najee Harris, right now, the expectation is for him to be a running back 1 in fantasy the day he steps on the field. And he's going in redraft leagues currently ahead of Antonio Gibson, Aaron Jones, Clyde Edwards-Helaire, J.K. Dobbins, DeAndre Swift. Now, if you look at the prospect profile of a Najee Harris, I would argue that running backs like J.K. Dobbins, like DeAndre Swift, honestly, even a guy like Antonio Gibson, y'all know how high we were on Antonio Gibson in last year's rookie drafts. I would argue that they all have a point to be ranked ahead of Najee Harris based on their talent profiles. But to understand that Najee Harris currently is being projected to be a much better asset this upcoming season, and what that would do with his dynasty value a year from now, they would just completely get crushed by Najee Harris with where the dynasty community is going to be valuing him next offseason. Now, I know if you go through the profile, I mean, he's already 23 years old, so that is something you have to point out. You hate to see that. And the reason you hate to see it is not necessarily because it changes the long-term outlook on Najee Harris, but more so it changes the historical hit rate for what you're going to find in his rookie year. So you don't like to see that he's already 23. That's definitely a red flag, but I'm not necessarily going to be taking into account his long-term value based on that age, because what matters at the running back position is not necessarily age. What matters at the running back position is actually having that guaranteed contract, which is going to guarantee you a starting role, guarantee you opportunity, which is going to make sure you're valuable in fantasy. Now, Najee Harris, just a first-round draft pick, which means he is signed to a 4-year contract with a 5th-year option. So Najee Harris completely safe on that department. He is also 6'1", 232 pounds, so he has the size to be that bell cow running back. He averaged 19 carries, 3.5 receptions, 145 total yards, 2.5 total touchdowns in Alabama his final season. And clearly, he's not on a roster that's going to be getting any other touches to the running backs outside of a Najee Harris. I mean, Benny Snell, Anthony McFarland, Kalen Ballage. It's not like they're going to be splitting the backfield. And I mean, we've seen Mike Tomlin over and over and over again decide to feature his running backs as workhorse guys. It doesn't matter if it's Le'Veon Bell. It doesn't matter if it's D'Angelo Williams stepping in for a suspended Le'Veon Bell. It doesn't matter if it's James Conner. I mean, whoever's the starting running back there is going to be a bell cow. So all of a sudden, we're looking at Najee Harris going, what is the dynasty community going to value him at if he comes out and he's a mid running back 1 his rookie season? Because that will be a higher mark than Jonathan Taylor was. And I'm not saying he's going to jump Jonathan Taylor in startup drafts. But what I'm saying is he's an incredibly safe bet to actually be a late first dynasty startup pick right now. And I'm seeing all the time over there on Patreon, people getting Najee Harris in the 3rd round of startup drafts. There's absolutely no reason for Najee Harris, an incoming rookie, to be drafted higher in high-stakes redraft leagues compared to dynasty leagues. So this is a major fault here. And I think another player that exemplifies this perfectly is going to be Kyle Pitts. Now, y'all know, leading up until the Julio Jones trade, I was all aboard the train that Kyle Pitts was going to be overvalued in fantasy. I preferred drafting Travis Etienne, getting that rookie season production, and then making that flip 12 months from now, understanding that rookie season production definitely has an impact on the price point that you're going to find with these rookies after their first season. But since the Julio Jones trade, I mean, you have seen the redraft community kind of flip on Kyle Pitts, and your own projection system has to show Kyle Pitts as a guy that is going to have a significant role in 2021, which is why after that happened, we came out and said, I'm getting ahead of it. We are taking an L on Kyle Pitts. He is easily worth that pick in a dynasty league, depending on league format. Of course, I'm not running out there and taking him over a Najee Harris in a non-tight end premium format. I'm not going to be higher than consensus on Kyle Pitts. I'm simply saying that if you want to draft him, I'm not going to make fun of you. We need to take our L on that. And what the redraft community is saying right now is they are saying that this is the correct take. You actually have Kyle Pitts as the consensus fourth tight end off the board already in 2021 redraft leagues. And like I said in yesterday's video, I mean, you go through, you look at Kyle Pitts, and if he hits this mark for what's currently being projected for him, he is going to be the best rookie tight end of all time. And we go through and we sit here and go, okay, if we were trying to project what the Kyle Pitts dynasty evaluation will be 12 months from now, if he does come in and he hits this expectation, if he does come in and he hits the expectation from high stakes redraft players that he is going to be the fourth tight end in fantasy, all of a sudden, this is a player that most likely is going to be the tight end one overall in dynasty ADP. So for that reason, I think that what we previously said this offseason, where we said, give me TJ Hawkinson in a piece, give me Noah Fant plus an extra first. I mean, I think those takes were wrong. I think we have to sit here. We have to acknowledge that. And of course, I am not going to be stubborn in saying that I am right 100% of the time. I think another thing we're about to point to shows that I may not necessarily be in line with the high stakes draft community here either. And that if you're pulling up some more rookie ADP to try to figure out what these players are expected to do their rookie seasons and how that would impact their dynasty value next year. I mean, currently, the redraft community is drafting Justin Fields over Tua Tagavailoa. Now, personally, I wouldn't agree with that for 2021, but my own opinion here is going to be kind of pushed to a side for a second, because we're more so trying to project what a dynasty player's value is going to be 12 months from now. We're not necessarily coming out here giving our exact opinions. Of course, we are going to do that the entire season. But like I said at the beginning of the video, this isn't going to drive all of your decision making. What it's going to do is it's going to be kind of a form of reassurance to try to check if your takes are in line or if you were just completely off the wall here in what you're projecting for a value 12 months from now. So here you see Justin Fields already being drafted over Tua Tagovailoa for upcoming 2021 production. And we have to ask ourselves, okay, if this expectation hits, what's going to be the startup price between the two players? I mean, you'd imagine that if Tua can't outproduce a rookie quarterback, if Tua actually is only like the quarterback 19, like he's currently being drafted for in redraft leagues, you'd imagine after a very disappointing rookie season in his subpar second year, while I don't think that's going to be the case, I'm excited about Tua for Dynasty, but at the very minimum, we have to check ourselves. We have to figure out what's going on here, because if Tua was a low-end quarterback too, all of a sudden, this is a player that is 100% going to be losing dynasty value. And if Justin Fields comes out and he actually reaches his ADP of being a mid quarterback too, possibly surpasses this, then you can automatically guarantee yourself that that's going to be a player worth more 12 months from now. Obviously, these are just projections. We have yet to see this actually happen, so you can't do everything with this, but it is noteworthy and should be kept in mind. Now, something that I really like to see, actually, y'all know I have kind of been on the train saying don't necessarily be going all in on Jerry Jeudy. I understand that everybody out here wants to talk about Jerry Jeudy being an elite route runner. I know that Jerry Jeudy was a great prospect coming out of last year's draft class, But we're looking at the situation going, hey, this is by far and away the worst situation in the entire NFL for any wide receiver to succeed. Not only do you have some of the worst quarterback play in the NFL with Drew Lock and Teddy Bridgewater, but at the same time, you're competing for targets with Courtland Sutton, Noah Fant, KJ Hamler. We've talked about this a ton before. But what you also see is you see Devonta Smith currently going ahead of Jerry Jeudy in redraft formats. Now, what does that tell us? That tells us, hey, what's going on here in Dynasty? Why is a rookie wide receiver in Devonta Smith, who was drafted inside the top 15 picks of this year's NFL draft, going ahead of Jerry Jeudy in redraft leagues, yet the Dynasty community isn't necessarily bought into this? So this is another example where possibly you use this data and you go through and you try to make that switch from a quote-unquote rising star to someone coming into the NFL right away. Because if Devonta Smith outproduces Jerry Jeudy, Devonta Smith's rookie season compared to Jerry Jeudy in year 2, think about where their dynasty value is going to be 12 months from now. Think about what the narrative between the two wide receivers is going to be. I mean, the gap in dynasty value is going to be massive. And right now, you actually have that reversed. Now, of course, you can also use this for contending teams. I think most people are going to be using this for contending teams, which is why I didn't want to focus in too much on that in this video, because that's very self-explanatory. I know a lot of people already do that. But a perfect example of this is by going through and looking at Myles Gaskin and Mike Davis, essentially going back-to-back right now in 2021 redraft leagues. Now, what this tells me is hey, in my dynasty startups where I'm seeing Myles Gaskin go 4 to 5 rounds ahead of Mike Davis, I mean, Myles Gaskin may be one of the most overrated players in dynasty, while Mike Davis may be one of the most underrated, because you're viewing both running backs as guys that are most likely only going to be options for this upcoming season. I mean, both of them are only rentals. So if the redraft community is split on who's going to be the better guy here and they're going back to back, why are they not split in dynasty? I mean, what are we missing here to have Mike Davis so far behind Myles Gaskin? So maybe if you're a contending team, instead of going and paying the premium for Gaskin, you go pick up Mike Davis for completely free. So I really hope that this was useful in how y'all can go through and use some of this own ADP and try to make better dynasty decisions with how you're evaluating these players. Because I think not only for those veterans, but also those rookies coming in, understanding their rookie season projections on how that will impact their dynasty value 12 months from now is going to be massive with how you value these players in startups, where you maybe want to go in a rookie draft. But of course, if you enjoyed this video, go down there, drop a like, leave a comment, subscribe to the channel. It helps us out a ton, and I'll see y'all with the video tomorrow. I want to thank everybody who has recently decided to join the flock in Alex, Jack, Bud, Kevin, Connor, Caesar, Jonathan, Joseph, Jordan, and James. Thank you, my dudes.